Welcome to Japanese Made Easy, where we use advanced techniques like pattern recognition and contextual learning so you can quickly and easily start speaking Japanese.
Welcome to Japanese Made Easy, Episode 4. Keep in mind that these lessons are cumulative, so please be sure to start at Lesson 1. As usual, let's start with some review.
カナダ人
Are from what country?
カナダ
That
アメリカ人
is from what country?
アメリカ
How would you translate this?
メキシコとカナダ
Mexico and Canada. Walk into a shop with a friend, point out and mention that sandwiches and donuts exist.
サンドイッチとドーナツあるよ
Also in line at the shop, you notice two friends, Pat and Chris. Point out their existence, but just stating the facts with no emotion at all.
パットとクリスいる
パットとクリスいる
I think we'll cover different parts of the world in groups, so let's head down under for these next two. The land famous for koalas and kangaroos is
オーストラリアオーストラリア
オーストラリア
Also, notice the consonant vowel repetition, so you can self-check your own pronunciation later.
オーストラリア
Even if we're practicing a country name that you don't have much relation to, don't skip these, as at some point you will want to be able to talk about places you've been or want to go, and of course need to understand them when you hear them from others. The next country is near Australia. True story. 10 years or so ago, I traveled from Japan to
ニュージーランドニュージーランド
The first city we stayed in was Auckland. It was about an 11-hour flight from Japan to
ニュージーランド
Here it is super slow.
ニュージーランド
Do go if you have the chance. It was very nice. If a person is from
オーストラリア
regarding their nationality, they are what?
オーストラリア人
If a person is from
ニュージーランド
they are
ニュージーランド人
ニュージーランド人
In casual Japanese, point out the fact that there is a person from Australia and a person from New Zealand.
オーストラリア人とニュージーランド人いる
And polite.
オーストラリア人とニュージーランド人がいます
Let's add to our vocabulary a bit, and as always, through context. When I was a kid, there was no internet, so I watched my favorite programs in the living room on the
テレビテレビ
So in English, we'd say television or TV. In Japanese, cognates are often shortened, so it's just
テレビ
テレビ
My desktop computer works okay, but I can't watch Netflix on it because my computer
モニタ
is broken.
モニターモニター
Rather than get it fixed, since they are kind of cheap these days, I'll just buy a new.
ーモニタ
Now the before the holidays Black Friday sales are coming up, so me, Chris, and Annie are going to go shopping for some electronics. We put on our protective hockey gear and head to the electronics store hoping to get some good deals. The plan is to buy a new
テレビとモニター
We get there and it's complete chaos. We see a bunch of people fighting over a Sony big screen.
テレビ、
We get close enough only to discover that they're all gone. Everything is gone. Chris points to the area where the TVs should have been. On the ground is just dust, torn up cardboard boxes, and a random wig. Speaking out loud and not to anybody in particular, he says,
テレビない。
Annie, seeing the same scene, repeats the phrase.
テレビない。
I say, oh well, maybe we get lucky and get a deal on some.
モニター。
Let's hurry over there. We battle our way through the crowd and make it to the computer area. No luck. Faced with rows of empty shelves where the monitors used to be, I say,
モニターない。
So you should have a feel for it now. Let's recap the Battle of the Electronic Shop. Chris pointed out and mentioned that,
テレビない。
and later I pointed out and mentioned that.
モニターない。
In your own words, how would you translate?
テレビない。
We could say there aren't any TVs, or literally, TVs don't exist. The store doesn't have any TVs. So you probably guessed by now that this is simply the opposite of pointing out that something does exist. When we want to point out that something we were expecting to be there isn't there, we can use the negative version of our existence verb, aru, which is nai. Let's work with that simple idea real quick. You point out that there are sandwiches to somebody.
サンドイッチある。
You thought there were sandwiches, but turns out there aren't any, literally mentioning that sandwiches don't exist.
サンドイッチない。
サンドイッチない。
Mention that there is coffee.
コーヒーある。
So for these, maybe we're just saying it out loud or to ourselves or just stating a fact. That is, if I were there with a friend, the friend would hear what I said, but I'm not saying it to them or with them in mind or for their benefit necessarily. Like, there's coffee, or no coffee. So those just feel like a no-yo delivery versus, hey, there's coffee. Hey, there's coffee, yo. So continuing without yo on the end. You thought there was coffee, but turns out there isn't. Mention this fact.
コーヒーない。
Point out the fact that there are donuts.
ドーナツある。
ドーナツある。
Point out the fact that there aren't any donuts.
ドーナツない。
Point out that the store you just entered has TVs.
テレビある。
Point out that the store you just entered doesn't have TVs as was expected.
テレビない。
The store has computer monitors.
モニターある。
The store that should have computer monitors doesn't, so you mention it.
モニターない。
モニターない。
So you may be wondering, why do I keep talking about the idea of pointing out and mentioning when there is something or when there isn't something that was expected to be there? Why not just say, there's a TV or there isn't a TV? Simply put, the particle might be different if the reason for saying it is different. Basically, I'm trying to make it confusion-proof for your future studies. Part of the reason they remain confusing is most books and videos out there don't provide this important part of the learning process. That is, to keep the situation in mind. And that's why I keep mentioning it over and over. It's important for staying unconfused in the long run. And in English, you just feel naturally what to say in a given situation. So this is how we can, in an audio format, start to develop that same type of sense for you in Japanese. So think of this as pointing out or bringing up the fact that something does or does not exist with ga aru or ga nai. If you're a member of my Japanese Mastery Method course, this next part will be review. But no such thing as being too good at the basics, so follow along anyway. Let's run through those again, but in polite Japanese. First, pointing out that there are sandwiches to somebody.
サンドイッチがあります。
サンドイッチがあります。
Now pay close attention to how arimasu changes when there aren't any. You thought there were sandwiches, but turns out there aren't any, literally mentioning that sandwiches don't exist.
サンドイッチがありません。
サンドイッチがありません。
Point out the fact that there are donuts.
ドーナツがあります。
Point out the fact that there aren't any donuts.
ドーナツがありません。
ドーナツがありません。
Point out that the store you just entered has TVs.
テレビがあります。
Point out that the store you just entered doesn't have TVs, as was expected.
テレビがありません。
The store has computer monitors.
モニターがあります。
The store that should have computer monitors doesn't, so you mention it.
モニターがありません。
All right, let's take a break.
And now here's your tip of the day from Japanese Made Easy.
There's something in linguistics known as a construction. That's the fancy term they give to the simple idea of a fill-in-the-blank phrase. For example, the English phrase, "I'll have blank," is a very common construction for ordering food. And you can fill in all sorts of things in the blank. I'll have the soup, I'll have the lobster, I'll have the pancakes, and so on. If a person were trying to learn English, they'd be smart to master such a common construction. And if you practice the right way, you'll quickly become fluent with that construction. If you do this for all the major constructions, you can quickly become fluent in the language. In short, constructions are the most efficient tool for developing fluency in a language. And it's no different for Japanese. Later, we'll be doing what is called construction branching, which is an organized way to expand on what you can say. Continuing on, we talked about things that don't exist. Now let's talk about people that we expect to be someplace but aren't. Mayumi texted Kenji telling him that she was at a party. You and Kenji get there, but don't see Mayumi anywhere. Kenji says,
まゆみいない。
Kenji texts her, but no response. Not knowing anybody there, you both decide to leave. Turns out Mayumi had just stepped out to the convenience store. When she gets back and doesn't see Kenji anywhere, she says to herself,
ケンジいない。
So that's easy enough. For people or animals, we use
いる。
and,
いない。
いない。
and similar to
あります。
and,
ありません。
we'll use
います。
and.
いません。
Recalling our two new country names from the beginning of the lesson,
オーストラリア、
and
ニュージーランド、
perhaps you were expecting to see some
オーストラリア人、
at the international party, but there isn't anybody from there. In casual Japanese, how would you bring up and mention the unexpected non-existence of Australians?
オーストラリア人いない。
Point out that there aren't any people from New Zealand.
ニュージーランド人いない。
Let's keep our casual and polite practice balanced. Seems everybody was looking forward to meeting some.
オーストラリア人、
Because you overhear a person say in polite Japanese, there aren't any Australians. How would they have said that?
オーストラリア人がいません。
オーストラリア人がいません。
You overhear another disappointed person point out the lack of New Zealanders. How would they say that?
ニュージーランド人がいません。
ニュージーランド人がいません。
In casual Japanese, looking in the refrigerator, you expect to see a sandwich, but there isn't one. How would you mention it?
サンドイッチない。
サンドイッチない。
Walking into the classroom, you expect to see,
小川先生。
but he or she isn't there.
小川先生いない。
Mention that there is coffee.
コーヒーある。
You thought there was coffee, but turns out there isn't. Mention this fact.
コーヒーない。
コーヒーない。
At a social event, point out a group of people from Mexico.
メキシコ人いる。
Point out the fact that there aren't any donuts.
ドーナツない。
Point out that the electronics store you just entered has TVs.
テレビある。
テレビある。
Still at the electronics shop, you notice some interesting people. Point out that there are both Australians and New Zealanders.
オーストラリア人とニュージーランド人いる。
Polite Japanese, and then we're done. Point out that the store you just entered doesn't have TVs, as was expected.
テレビがありません。
Point out that there aren't any Americans where you were expecting some to be.
アメリカ人がいません。
The store that should have computer monitors doesn't, so you mention it.
モニターがありません。
There isn't a dog with the friendly yo.
犬がいませんよ。
No sandwiches.
サンドイッチがありません。
In casual Japanese, wanting to sound friendly, say, there isn't a cat.
猫いないよ。
Change it to polite.
猫がいませんよ。
All right, that was a great workout and the end of the lesson. Take a long break and let things settle in, and then your speaking homework for this lesson is to imagine that people or things are missing from where you expect them to be. Throughout the day, mention that something or somebody doesn't exist with ga nai or ga inai, and with the mas forms. Also, I've made an extra practice version of today's lesson. You can grab that over at JapaneseMadeEasy.com. For questions or comments, feel free to drop me an email at greg@JapaneseMadeEasy.com or just leave a comment in the comments section. See you in the next episode.
This has been another episode of Japanese Made Easy. For additional practice audios and downloads, visit JapaneseMadeEasy.com.